I was working with a group of students recently and they were studying tourism. So I asked them, well, what is a tourist? And they said, a tourist is someone who visits another place. I said, does that make me a tourist today then? I'm visiting another place, your school. And they said, no, you have to be having fun. I said, I am having fun. I overheard one of them saying, it's weird him, isn't he? I said, what is a tourist if it's not just visiting another place then? And they said, well, it's somebody who takes photographs when they visit that other place. I said, I've been taking photographs of your school as I've been walking around. They said, okay, but you have to spend money. I've said, I've spent money coming here today and I'm going to spend money on my lunch. They said, oh, you've got an answer for everything. I said, I'm not trying to give that impression. What I'm trying to do is find out what you think a tourist is. How could we find out more? They said, well, we can go and look in the books, we can look online. I said, great, I'll give you 20 minutes. Go and do your research, come back and we'll see where we go from there. The teachers who were watching that lesson said their children were far more animated than normal, particularly when it came to the research. The students were in groups. One child would say, see, I told you a tourist is someone who goes on tour. Another one says, yes, but we could go on tour and not be tourists. For example, go on a tour of our school. And somebody else said, oh yes, but it's about being on holiday. And they said, but I've been on holiday. We were all on holiday in the summer holidays. It doesn't mean that we were tourists for that whole summer holiday. One girl said, I know you're a tourist if you think you're a tourist. And she was very smug about her answer. But another girl said, hang on a minute. I've just been on holiday. My baby sister didn't think of herself as a tourist, and yet probably she was. And it's about this idea of getting students to question, to challenge, to wonder together. I want to create that sense of cognitive wobble, that sense of intellectual dilemma so that the students think more. And the metaphor I use for this is a learning pit. I developed this idea in the early 90s when I was teaching and using philosophy for children a lot. And it's a really nice way to think through concepts. Stage one of the pit is to identify a key concept. For example, tourism. Lots and lots of other examples from right across the curriculum: fair test, justice, knowledge, shape, toys, names, real, telling lies, tragedy, culture. Every subject has lots and lots of concepts. And by concepts, I mean more than facts. We could say Paris is the capital of France. That's a fact. We can't really challenge that very well. Are you sure? The kids say, yes, we are sure Paris is the capital of France. But what is a capital city? Now we're getting into looking at the concept. Capital cities. What is a capital city? Is it always the most important city? Is it always the biggest city? And so on. It's identifying the key concept, because then we've got the opportunity to begin to think and to question. Stage two then is creating the cognitive conflict. Cognitive conflict is where students have got two or more ideas in their mind at the same time and they agree with both of those ideas, but those ideas conflict with each other. For example, a student who is the victim of bullying, we might say to them, if you are bullied, tell the teacher. That's idea number one. But they might say to us, yes, but my dad says I have to hit back twice as hard. There's idea number two. Those two ideas they agree with, but they're in conflict with each other. That's what I mean by cognitive conflict. Another example, students will tell us stealing is wrong, but they will also say that Robin Hood was a good man. Those two ideas are in conflict with each other. Food is something I eat. There's idea number one. Idea number two, just think of all the disgusting things children eat. For example, their bogies or nails or hair. That's idea number two. Food is something I eat. Lots of things I eat are not food. There's a conflict. I was working with a group of students. They were 7 or 8 years old, and I asked them, what are you studying? They said, odd numbers. I said, oh wow, what's an odd number? They said, an odd number cannot be divided by 2. I said, okay, so if I've got 5 cakes and I share 5 cakes with your teacher, how many would we get each? And they said, she would get 3 and you would get 2. I said, well, why? And they said, because you're a gentleman. I said, no, I want my fair share. They said, okay, she'll get 2, you'll get 2, and you'll leave 1 for a friend. I said, come on, what would you really do? And they turned round as if to apologise to their teachers for what they were about to say. They leaned forward and they said, we'd cut the cakes really. I said, so you can divide 5 by 2, can you? They said, yes. I said, so does that make 5 an even number then? And they said, yes. Lots of the teachers sat at the back going, spent weeks teaching this. My purpose is not to confuse them and then leave them there. My purpose is to get them to think more. If, for example, I had said, what is an odd number? They had said, an odd number cannot be divided by 2. And I said, very good, well done. How much thinking would there have been? But by challenging them and questioning them, they then had to use more skills of thinking. And by skills of thinking, I mean, for example, defining, evaluating, generalizing, interpreting, predicting, questioning, testing, verifying. These are important life skills. They're important study skills. They're important exam skills. Think of the exams where the students are asked to predict what would happen if, or summarize what the author is trying to say, to verify the following statement, or to interpret this diagram. Of course, it's not just about exams, it's about those life skills. There's also a collaborative element to the pit as well, because students work together. They come together to support each other, to help each other, and to build on each other's ideas. After a while of being in the pit, some of the students come out of the pit. And notice I say some, because they don't all come out of the pit at the same time. When I was working with those children on odd numbers, it was halfway through the lesson when one of the boys said, I know, it's like odd socks. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, my mum and dad say no matter how many socks they put in the washing machine, they always get an odd number out. I said, can you tell me a bit more about that? And he said, well, socks come in pairs, don't they? And when you get the socks out, you have to pair them up. And there's always one left over without another sock. It's like that, isn't it? That caused a sense of eureka for children. Because they said, oh yes, that's right. And then they started to build on his answers. One of the first times I used this metaphor at a conference, I talked about stage 3 being the eureka moment. And there's a woman on the front row jumped up and she said, I've just got married. And I'm thinking, I'm very happy for you, but please sit down. She said, I've just got married to a Greek man, and so I'm learning Greek. And eureka is Greek for I found it. And I thought, isn't that interesting? Eureka means I found it. It doesn't mean my teacher gave me the answer. It doesn't mean my friend showed me. It means I found it. And when you get that sense of eureka, what do you want to do with it? You want to share it. You want to talk to people, and you want to repeat it. How many times have parents picked up children and said, what did you do at school today? And our children say, nothing. Try shutting them up if they've had that eureka moment. They will be blah, 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 blah. And when they come back to school the next day, what will they want? More of the same. And here's the key about the pit. Do you get that sense of eureka if you haven't first struggled? If I had said, what is a tourist? They had said, someone who visits another place, and I had said, very good, well done. Is that the sense of eureka? No. They necessarily have to struggle first to then have a chance of getting that sense of elation, that sense of eureka, that sense of I found an answer. At the end of the pit, stage 4 is to look back over the learning journey and ask a series of metacognitive questions. For example, what did you think a tourist was at the beginning? What caused you to think again? What got you into the pit? What strategies did you use when you're in the pit? How did you come out of the pit? What do you think your answer is now compared to what it was before? The learning pit helps students to develop a deeper understanding of concepts. At stage 1, that's where they've got surface level knowledge. They know the basics, they have a reasonable grasp of the facts. And then stage 2, which is down at the bottom of the pit, this is where they're getting into some deeper thinking. They're questioning their own and others' assumptions, they're looking at exceptions to a general rule, and they're exploring concepts in greater detail. Very often it's at this stage 2 that the desire for enhanced learning strategies and collaboration increases. That's when they say, please help us to develop the strategies we need. And it's also when they realise that they can overcome conundrums and dilemmas if they apply effort, if they're determined, if they're resilient. In other words, being in the pit helps us get into what Carol Dweck would call a growth mindset. Stage 3 is where they've got their constructed, their deep, their thoughtful answer, that idea exactly what it is and what it's not, to take with them into the future. The pit is a metaphor that you can share with your students. So for example, you can say, how many of you are out of the pit now? They put their hands up. And how many of you are still in the pit? They put their hands up. Pair them up. So if you are out of the pit, it's your job to help those who are still in the pit to come out. Mind you, if you are still in the pit, it's your job to try and drag those who are out of the pit back down into it. Don't let them get away with easy answers. And what is wonderful is those students who often struggle in the lessons where memory is king, that if I can memorize this, I can do well in the tests and the exams and the tasks that I'm asked. This is changing that and saying, we've got to think it through, we've got to get into the complexity, and we've got to really work together.